As I read the name of this piece and I consider the context of the album in its entirety of what I've heard thus far from Ad Infinitum being that album is Chapter 2 Legacy, I get a feeling this is going to be more of a frenetic piece. We'll see how best my ambition marries with the track's merits, but I look at the name of it, and it's called Animals. So I expect, again, a more frenetic energy, which Ad Infinitum has done quite successfully. Or perhaps, maybe they've relied on a softer structure, because again, the metal landscape and metal stylings can be varied quite a bit. Artists perhaps approach their musical ambitions differently, as Ad Infinitum has. It's been a real mixture of sound from them in some of their offerings. But I'm very happy to have stumbled upon them. And they're, again, just another testament as to why I speak quite often in praise and adoration of the European metal landscape. I've been so impressed by many of the groups I've come across, many of which are spotlighted on this channel, and many of which are coming soon. It's an ever-growing list, not only from what I've come across in artists that I want to feature, but also in your recommendations. Like the comment sections for a lot of the European music I cover, as well as music generally, they're flourishing with names. I mean, it's, again, an exhaustive list, but I'm always happy to spotlight new talent and perhaps enjoy new pieces with you for the first time and be able to perhaps gauge new fans as well through my videos and create paths forward for you in your... If you're somebody that has been such a musical connoisseur like I have, maybe you've been searching for those talents that you feel are a little more elusive to your focus. Maybe you don't know where to look. I'm hoping to, if I can do anything on this channel with my music coverage, to engage new listeners, possibly to bring you into focus of talents that I've come across and that I've loved, for being able to experience that same, and offer that same joy in the presence of yourself as we listen to the track together. I mean, again, these are some of my favorite music videos. Technically, they're some of my favorite videos to produce on this channel, and as I've said before many times, I've always wanted to bring music into a grander spotlight here, because I do tend to cover a wide range of entertainment offerings in many different mediums. Artistic stylings are varied across the board in regards to our language, but music for me has always been the favored of anything I've covered, because for me, music has always had such a personal touch in my life, not only from the appreciation of craft, but in what music's done for me, the human side to music as well, and how it resonates with listeners. I've said before, I feel that in many years of my life, I've been drawn closer to music than I have other people. I've felt that I've been in a tighter bond with an art style that understands me, right? And again, music is varied. Again, the ambitions of artists are very different. With Ad Infinitum, it's kind of a blend between, I've said at least on the album, and for what I've heard thus far, and the preceding 3 tracks being Unstoppable, Inferno, and Afterlife, there's a personal touch to a lot of these tracks, blended with such magnificent music, like high caliber talent in the metal scene. But I love, again, how music in itself is such a varied art form and how it touches people's lives. And I've really wanted to embody that in this channel and share that enjoyment with you, to the best of my extent, but also to give you perhaps that interest if you've had this desire to reach deeper into the music field than what you can find in terms of enjoying listens and beautiful talents that, again, you haven't known where to look. Maybe names that are seldom brought in your circles. I would say that about Ad Infinitum, and again, this is in no way to come across as being disrespectful, but as, well, not only of Ad Infinitum, but many of the European music groups that I listen to, specifically in the metal scene, many of the names that I've mentioned repeatedly on this channel, I bring them into my personal social circle, which is, again, probably more limited in comparison to others, and nobody knows the names of the groups I bring up, which does, again, put me in a more of a niche and isolated space, but I don't care. If I'm finding good talent that is an immediate repeat listen, I feel driven to enjoying the works at such a deep level and embracing these pieces, it's a satisfactory, what's the word I'm looking for? Deviation from expected norms, right? Maybe, again, like I said, I don't have the best connection and appreciation to music tastes that maybe some of my peers do or friends, but I'm very happy in the space that I'm in, especially when it pertains to European music. And I've been fair, in saying that I'm not trying in any way to overshadow other artists, that many of which are spotlight of this channel that come from other places in the world, specifically America. We've got plenty of talents in the metal scene in America as well. But European music, for me, has such a drive to it, in its individuality and reach, that I have not felt extended in many other places. And I continue to be in this deep romance that, yes, I've said there's many groups I want to cover, many in America as well. I will get to them. But right now, I'm like, I'm really in European mode. It's been like me listening to European music, my playlist pretty much nonstop for the last several weeks. And with Ad Infinitum, like I said, of Chapter 1 Monarchy, when I first listened to the album in its entirety, besides covering the first, the 4 singles or at least as music videos on this channel, it's been an immediate re-listen. Chapter 2 is set to mimic that path. And I'm very happy, like I said, to promote groups such as Ad Infinitum that really are such dynamic presences within the European music scene, or you could say, broadly speaking, the metal scene entirely. I've really enjoyed this group, and I've hoped to, in some way, extend that enjoyment to you if you are perhaps a prospective fan, or perhaps sharing that interest if you are a long-time Ad Infinitum fans. And through the course of my videos, I love how music does this, that it perhaps connects people, to others that might have similar tastes to me, right? But maybe we're, geographically speaking, quite apart. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they could be closer than we think. I have no idea. But I love being able to meet others that share in my enjoyment, because as I said, I don't have much of that in my life. It's been nice to be connected with others that perhaps share my music interests and my favorability towards artists that, again, deserve such acclaim, like Ad Infinitum. And they really do. There's so much depth to the music and appreciation. Like, coming off of Afterlife, the track I just covered, man, that song is good. Really is. That's an immediate repeat listen in itself. It just, the structure to that and the variants, I'm still in a state of surprise, even though I've covered at this point about 7 of their works in total. Let's add an 8th. This is the 7th track off of Chapter 2 Legacy. It's the last track I'm going to cover from the album, then I'll listen to it on my own in its entirety. But this is ending with Animals. Like I said, I get a vibe of a more frenetic pacing. I don't know, but let's see. Maybe more of a drive into the chaotic metal. Or maybe it could be more dramatic. I'm not sure. I haven't read the lyrics in depth yet. I have those pulled up. And if you're not familiar with how I format these music videos, publications on my channel, I'm going to pull up the music video in a second. We'll be able to enjoy the piece together for a first-time listen, and for those of you who perhaps like to read along with the narrative of the piece and get that lyrical perspective and the message, I will have that provided to you in the video on the bottom of the screen. The lyrics will be superimposed, and they'll transition with the song as we proceed forward. All right, Animals. Let's see where this goes. But either way, we're expanding I'm expanding my library of Ad Infinitum, perhaps you are as well. Let's add another one on, because I've been really happy with what I've heard thus far. High energy introduction. Okay. A bit of a pop atmosphere blended with the more frenetic symphonic metal side. Good symphonic ballad in the background. Good string instruments. Oh, it's gorgeous. I definitely get a bit of a, again, like I said, it's like a metal pop song. Even just in like the dress aesthetic. But to give it some original flair, again, like I said, there's depth. I don't find it not much in the pop music, but here I do. Bring on the aggression. That's great. It's definitely mounting in energy, so now we're definitely dipping more into metal, but at least the introduction had more of like a pop flair. And there's some more of those background screams. Love that with the Chapter 1. Yeah, and their musical construction is always great to listen to. Oh, that's good. More screaming with that faster pace. Oh, it's perfect. You can tell we're going down a more ominous edge with the red lighting. It's a good visual cue. Good use of pyrotechnics as well, with the smoke effects, the lights. It's a good compliment. Great styling to the piece. I mean, again, like I said, it had a real familiar rock energy to other tracks, and to make a comparison, this is a good ending to end on a softer edge. It's a great conclusion. Takes you out of the song quite nicely. It's a beautiful transition. This reminds me a lot of, speaking of American music, I've raved about this group many times on this channel before. Some of you, I'm sure, are very familiar with this group name. Starset, big favorite of mine. They've been for several years. Conceptual in focus, if you're not aware of them. I would describe them as a hybrid between metal, hard rock, electronic rock, and pop rock. I kind of put them in that space. Even though, well, yeah, I think it's a good debate. Maybe there's even more qualifiers to them. But Starset has such a diverse area that they cover of what's available in the metal range. And there are plenty of tracks that they've done that have a pop flair. I've spoken before on this channel that I'm not the biggest pop music fan. And again, this is part of the reason I've dipped into the alternative, which again, maybe in part is some of the basis for the isolation I feel among my peers that I know personally, and that my music tastes don't reflect others. In that a lot of my friends are driven more to what's available in, like, let's say, the Hollywood scene in terms of pop music, stuff you hear off the radio or on TV, and it's like, that music just doesn't appeal. I'm not speaking necessarily of metal, it's more of like your generic, like, you know, award shows pop songs. Like stuff you see like maybe on like the Grammys or something, or the VMAs, and it's like, these just don't appeal to me. You know, it feels shallow, and in some cases it feels repetitious or heavily commercialized. I don't see the artistry of the piece and what's yearning it to be its own individual thing. Versus, for example, a song like this, by comparison, which definitely has an artistic flair that puts it in a more individualized capacity. But Starset, it's a good example of this, in fact, because again of that pop flair. Yes, I'm driven more, of course, to their more aggressive songs. As a metalhead, that's my preference of choice. And even as, you know, you're a metalhead, your preferences of what sound to go for maybe shift you around in other places. Starset has dipped quite a bit over the last couple of years into a pop sound with some of their offerings, specifically off of Divisions. Their first two albums, Transmissions and Vessels, followed more along the aggressive rock path, and then Divisions took a bit of a 180. Although they still had plenty of aggressive songs, there became a softer flair to them that wasn't as existent when they started. Or at least if it was in very limited fashion. And it wasn't necessarily to the style of what Divisions offered. It was interesting. And then Horizons came along as of 2021 and really dipped into that. But I would say it was more... Divisions had much more of a pop flair to it than I felt Horizons did. Horizons felt like it was a bit of an even mixture. But even of a group like that, like, let's say, for example, again, where they primarily be attributed in the rock space, there's some individuality amongst their specific songs on an album collection and their focus, and maybe they do tend to venture off into different places. Maybe even some songs produce a bit of a blend, and they have a couple. Let's say, well, you know, here's a good example, Leaving This World Behind. That's the 6th track off Horizons, I think. It's a good piece. That one has softer chorus section, then it really goes for the guttural in the chorus, and then there's even this guitar riff section that's just so aggressive and kind of came out of it's a 180 in terms of the established sound of the piece. But again, you listen to it and you're like, there's just so much mixture here, but it produces a dynamic work where in other places, if it were like strictly pop or strictly rock. It would not necessarily be as creative if it weren't for that mixture. I think Starset's actually a great comparison here with Animals. In terms of its energy, like again, it has a softer interlude. I mean, even again, like I said, in the dress sense and part of Melissa Boney, like it comes across in a way that feels familiar to existent mainstream artists in the pop scene. But it still, again, has this rock chic in style and in sound. But the way it introduces itself, again, it has that edgier presence, and then it kind of dips off back a bit, and it has that symphonic background, which I really appreciated. I thought that was beautifully done. And then it transforms itself more into an aggressive piece as we go along. But again, it's got a steady flow, but it kind of plays around between being familiar and original. And I'd say dips more into the original space on those merits. It's a really good track, though. I mean, it's beautiful, and the pacing, the lyrics also were great. The construction as well to blend that with the sound. I love the spoken word interlude to go into the screams, by the way, and how the screams themselves were faster paced. It was much swifter than what you would come to expect with screams that perhaps are a little longer substantiated. It was very incremental, right? It paced itself beautifully, in my opinion. It's a gorgeous piece. Again, I hope for those harder screams, because Melissa Boney's screaming, I've spoken before, I don't often hear, in the context of female-fronted metal groups, I don't oftentimes hear screaming. But when I've heard it, let's say, for example, in American groups, I remember. Even in European groups, I remember. And with Ad Infinitum, that was a key trait that I heard initially, and I'm like, man, this is gorgeous. And I feel the exact same way, even though, again, with the faster pacing, give it a very distinct edge too that I haven't heard other places. Like, to pace that much faster worked so well for the energy of the piece, gave it an even flow, great vision. And the song itself, like, in the lyrical construction, is based on like "We Are Animals." That's like the key line. Had such a great energy, and again, to blend the sound and the tone with the lyrical style. This band just hits like every dimension of where the music should for me. Like, everything about their music works so sufficiently well. That's been what I said about Monarchy, and in this case of what I've covered off of Legacy, that's been not a different takeaway at all. I'm very impressed with this group, as I continue to be. And I hope that you felt the same. That's a dynamic piece. It'll easily be a real listen. It's all their songs are. And I can't wait to listen to Chapter 2 in its entirety. That's my next step. That's going to sum up what I've covered thus far. I mean, it takes a while for me to get these videos out, so forgive me. Perhaps, like, there's a couple tracks that you wanted me to cover. I don't know. Maybe, I've got a channel in the works. Maybe I'll be able to evolve that vision later. I've mentioned it before, sporadically, but it's an adjacent channel. I've said before in regards to Symphonies and Small Talk, I wanted to launch it as of January 1st of the new year. I'm going to have to postpone it a bit. I hate saying that because I really wanted to be on top of things with this, but I did leave a bit of a door open saying that was my goal point, but the way things are going, I do have to put it's a bit on back order, so to speak. But I've spoken before in terms of the integration between channels, where this one's going to be more focused on original listens. That one will be able to talk about familiar music, and still hopefully, produce the goal of being able to touch new listeners out there and get you introduced to talent that you might not be aware of yet, but maybe you want to easily have experience of a re-listen. Ad Infinitum, as I listen to Chapter 2 on my own in full, maybe I'll be able to feature some of those songs. If there are any songs on here that you feel that what I haven't covered, being Unstoppable, Inferno, Afterlife, and Animals as the exceptions. If there are any songs in this album, because again, I'm approaching a bit late, that you would like to hear my thoughts on, leave that in the comments down below, and I will put those into consideration. I don't know when I'll get to it. Again, as much as I want to get that channel launched soon, there's a couple more preparatory steps I have to work on in terms of its official launch. I'll announce it closer to when it debuts. I'll just say for right now, it's coming. Not sure yet when, but I've been building to it for a while. It's been a necessary pathway. If there are any songs you'd like to hear my thoughts on from Chapter 2 that I haven't covered yet, drop those down below and I will put them in the lineup as considerations. And if I ever get to them, we'll see. And then keep your eyes peeled as well on that channel. The link currently is down below in the description. Maybe if you want to link yourself up and subscribe and all that, you can. And that way you can be updated for whenever that channel launches. I'll keep a record as I go forward of when that'll be, at least when I have a better sense of time. and when the evolution of the channel fully materializes and is ready. Because there's still some necessary hoops I'm jumping through. But for now, I've liked what I've heard off of Chapter 2. I'd love to hear your thoughts down below, as well as the angle of what you come from in regard to your Ad Infinitum experience. If you're a new listener and this is a fresh introduction for you, which I think it's a great piece to introduce, I've covered this group as well, again, like I said on this channel, extensively at this point, 8 tracks in total, so 7 of which maybe you haven't heard yet. You can have those experiences with me if you so choose. You can go watch those videos and you can enjoy my thoughts, at least in some of their initial works, from both Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. Maybe you're an expert on Ad Infinitum and you've been a fan for a long time. I'd also love to hear your thoughts down below in this piece and where it stacks in the lineup for you among the 4 tracks I've covered, maybe as well, your overall feeling of the album. As far as my thoughts, in short, like I've already given a summation, but it's great. It's I think a beautiful blend, again, an example of Ad Infinitum's talents. It's a wonderful piece, great energy to it, interesting style blends, again, and how it dips into the familiar spaces of some other music groups, but also has its own uniqueness. I continue to be impressed on every measure with Ad Infinitum, and again, they're another testament as to why the European landscape is so favored with me. It's a pleasure to listen to the song, though, as it is always with Ad Infinitum. And I can't wait to cover them in the future. Again, Chapter 3, incoming, with the presently 2 singles that have released, but I'm very thrilled with what I'm finding with Ad Infinitum, and I can't wait to listen to more from them. But Chapter 2 thus far has been, like Chapter 1, an absolute treat. Thank you so much for watching this video. Before you bounce, feel free to drop a like and comment, subscribe to this channel with a ding on the bell, and share this video with your friends. And consider checking out the description here. There you'll find links to my other channels, as well as addresses to my other social media accounts and ways you can help support my work if you feel so inclined. May God bless you, and looking forward to when our paths cross again.